Hey guys, what is up? Ioki here, bringing you a brand new tier list for the support role for patch 12.4. It just dropped. If this is your very first time on the channel, or maybe you need a reminder of who I am, my name is Ioki. I'm a multi-season high elo player. I've hit 400 LP Grandmaster. I've been Grandmaster several seasons in a row. Got lots and lots of high elo solo queue and competitive experience. And my specialty is in the support role. I play pretty much every champion as a support, off meta, on meta. Good picks, bad picks, you name it. So I want to just say before we get into the video, if you guys have not subscribed to the channel, we are trying to hit 100,000 subscribers on the channel in 2022. So it really helps if you subscribe, and it doesn't cost you anything. Takes 2 seconds. So that being said, let's get into it. Guys, I am going to be structuring this tier list a little bit differently than we normally do because I want to spend the majority of this video talking about the absolute best picks. And also one very special champion that dropped on this patch, and her name is, of course, Renata. Now, normally in these tier lists, I go over in detail why these champions are trash and why these champions are not so good but can work. I'm not going to spend any time on the tier 5 and tier 4. If you're unfamiliar with how the tier list works, the higher you go on the tier list, the better the pick it is and more of your games. So, you know, tier 5, these champions are trash. They're not good at support. You're really hurting your climb by playing them. And if you want to hear my thoughts more on these lower tiers, check out my last tier list. I always go in depth and on every single champion individually, but I really want to talk a lot about the highest echelons of champions in this one. So, you know, we've got Annie, Malzahar, Anivia, Fiddlesticks, Nunu, and Ivern down here. I just really don't recommend you play them. Moving on. Tier 4, you are hurting your climb by playing these champions. We got Poppy, Malphite, Scion, Shaco, Camille, Nico, Misfortune, Jarvan, Ari, Rammus, Talia. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't play these champions. That's not to say that these champions don't work in the support role. They do, and I like playing a lot of these champions, but if you're going to play 1,000 games of a tier 1 champion versus 1,000 games of a tier 4 champion, you're going to have more success with the tier 1 champion. So I'm just going to move up. So let's start talking about it. Now, tier 3, this is the majority of champions in the support role. These champions are pretty average, and they should really only be played if you are skilled with them or used as counter picks. Now, we've got Ashe, Shin, Taric, Pantheon, Swain, Velk. You guys can you can use your eyes. I don't have to read these out for you, right? But yeah, basically these champions are strong when picked as specific counter picks. Like with, for instance, in Morgana's case, she is the absolute best counter pick champion in the game. If the enemy team locks in a Blitzcrank or a Leona, you lock in Morgana, and that's a really good pick. But is Morgana a good pick to just blind pick of every single game, 1,000 games in a row? No, not really. You know, these champions aren't bad by any means. You know, we have some champions that are actually considered pretty good in certain scenarios. Like Rakan is great at rounding out a team. Taric is actually playable if you have someone like a Master Yi on your team. Amumu is still a pretty solid support option, as well as Brand, really great hypercarry stuff. But typically, you know, these champions are pretty middle of the road, which is why it's the biggest tier. Now, we've got Renata in tier 3. I'm going to come back to her and talk about her later because I want to talk more in depth about the tier 2s. Now, this is where we start to get into champions where if like you come onto my stream and you're like, hey, who should I play? I'm stuck in bronze. I'm stuck in, you know, platinum or diamond. Which champions do you actually recommend that I play? Right here. All these champions and up, tier 2 and tier 1. So we got Soraka, Leona, Zyra, Karma, Zillion, Janna, Sona, Nautilus, Pyke. Now let's talk about them individually. Soraka, absolutely absurd champion. Disgusting levels of heal. Obviously, you're going to be dealing with the lower amount of agency when it comes to you're still playing a squishy enchanter support that, you know, she can't really frontline properly. She doesn't have a lot of damage outside of like the first couple of levels in laning phase. But if you slot her in the teams where you already have a functioning frontline, you already have functioning utility and CC and damage coming out of your team comp, and you've got a hyper carry to play around. Soraka, combined with good positioning, insane champion. Grievous really doesn't even work on her anymore. Like it's kind of insane, like the level that they've just allowed this champion to just pump thousands and thousands of HP into people. Up next is Leona. Now, Leona, I still think is one of the best tank supports That being said, tank supports are kind of struggling right now. They are not in the best spot that they've ever been in. We don't see a lot of tank supports here at the top. We see, Leona, Nautilus, and Blitzcrank, and they are a little more specialized. And it makes me sad because Leona is indeed low tier 2. She's been tier 1 for the past 2 or 3 years straight, and I have a special place in my heart for Leona. I'm a really good Leona player. I've always used her to climb, but right now there's just something about the meta that is just not favoring her. She's not tanky enough. She doesn't do enough damage. She can't empower hyper carries, and that's kind of the gist of the meta right now, is that we're kind of in a hyper carry ADC meta where playing enchanters is just a better way to contribute to your team than locking in a champion that can stun someone for 1 second. So unless you are using Leona as a counterpick, for instance, she's really, really good against Zyra, who's also good. We'll talk about her next. I would just kind of avoid playing Leona right now. Well, I wouldn't avoid her. She's really, really good. If you're going to be playing tank supports, you should play Leona or Nautilus, 100%. But blind picking her feels pretty bad, not gonna lie. She gets poked out of a lot of lanes. She gets outskilled at the 10-minute mark. And this is an enchanter kingdom. Now let's talk about someone who's not an enchanter, though. If you're going to be playing an AP mage or hyper carry 1v9 style support, Zyra's your girl. She's incredibly easy to pilot. She's got very versatile builds. You can go Ludens if they don't have squishies. You can go Liandry's if they have 2 or more tanks. She's very low economy. She only needs 1 item to really start ramping up the damage. She's very, like I said, very easy to pilot. And honestly, that plays a lot when it comes to champions that I recommend. For instance, Pyke is not easy to pilot. There are you have to be very proactive and find the situations that suit Pyke when you're playing him. You have to land your ultimates. You have to know all the combos. You have to be able to sneak in Halo Blade's auto attacks. Mechanically, it's easier to just lock in Zyra and be like, WQ. Okay, we poked him out. Nice. So yeah, Zyra is quite strong. Now, and let's talk about all-rounders. I talked a little bit about how Rakan kind of rounds out comps. I consider Karma to be very similar to that in the enchanter class. Karma is a very, very good all-rounder. You can build Moonstone and pump out some decent heals. You've got really good poke in lane. There's a strong Comet build right now. Tyler 1 is succeeding heavily with Karma right now, if that tells you anything. The champion is just super versatile. You got a nice root. What I like about Karma is that it feels like you always have options in team fights. You've always got the option of, using your mantra E. You've got your option of using your mantra W, your mantra Q. Typically, you're going to be using mantra Q to get through the lane, and that in combination with your Spell Thief's Edge and Comet, you actually do quite a lot of damage. It's pretty good lane poke, actually. So yeah, Karma is one of the stronger enchanters right now. Zilean is a little bit of a niche pick. I would be pairing him with, of course, a hyper carry. But this is a champion that you want to be putting in a lot of practice. He's not someone that you just want to pick up because he is really only useful if you can land both bombs. But man, in team fights, if you get those big multi-person stuns, you get a bomb onto their back line or even onto their front line, get 2 or 3 man stun. You've got the most incredible ultimate for a hyper carry. It lets people play aggro with basically no punishment. And we're going to talk about Zilean a little bit later when we talk about Renata. But yeah, Zilean is quite strong right now. I think he's kind of flying under the radar as to how much utility is packed into this champion. You've got AoE stun. You've got 99% slowdowns, which is basically just a root. And then, of course, his game-changing ultimate. Janna, crackhead champion ever since they reworked her, and that her rework where her tornado is going 1,000,000 miles per hour, paired with the fact that glacial augment is heavily abusable on her, really, really good. Now, I'm sure you've seen the Janna smite top, where she basically just roams around the map and supports the team, and you don't have a top laner. And if you haven't, I've got a couple tubers on it. It's a really interesting strategy. They did unfortunately nerf that strategy. Well, fortunately, actually. They did fortunately nerf that strategy. That being said, even without the cheese strategy element, Janna is still a really, really good champion on her own. Make sure you're taking Glacial Augment, though, because, man, those tornadoes shred through team fights. It gets everybody slowed. They're dealing less damage to your team. Really, really good champ. Sona, don't really have much to say other than this champion scales harder than anyone else in the game. If you think the game is going to last like 20 plus minutes, on paper and in purely in terms of numbers, like how much healing and damage and like speed ups and stuff like that, Sona's numbers scale harder than anyone else. Now, there's champions that have better kits for late game, but Sona's really good. Now, I talked a little bit about Nautilus already. I don't think he's like blind pickable, but if your team needs a tank, he can be a little overbearing to pilot. Like he just feels slow. His hook sometimes lands when it shouldn't, and it sometimes misses when it should hit. He's kind of a weird champion, but he's kind of like a more balanced version of Leona. Leona's really, really good at locking down one person. Nautilus is much better at applying different types of CC to several champions, right? It's also always nice to have an absolutely unmissable ultimate because, like I talked about earlier, ease of piloting is a strength of a champion. And Nautilus, even if you miss everything, even if you are having a rough game, you've always got that ultimate to rely on. And a tank being able to apply, 4 different types of CC. He's got a slow, he's got a root, he's got a displacement with his hook, and then he's got a knock up with his ultimate. That's really, really good. That puts a lot of pressure on the enemy team. So let's talk about Pyke. This champion, I'm really having a lot of fun playing Pyke. I'm going to show you my my master tier account right now. It's my master tier Smurf. Been playing a lot of Senna, but when Senna gets picked or banned, I just play Pyke. And look at this, 72% win rate. He seems really, really strong right now. Like I'm seeing him succeed in the mid lane. I'm seeing him succeed in the bot lane. And I think he's one of those champions that they didn't buff him or anything. He just feels so much better in response to a lot of popular picks. Like if the enemy team locks in a Soraka, easiest Pyke game of your life, right? If the enemy team locks in a Soda, God forbid, super, super easy Pyke game. So he's one of those champions who has found a lot of strength in relation to the meta. Like he's almost like a response to the meta. There just being a lot of squishy, low testosterone enchanters running around right now. So Pyke is stronger than he's ever been, and he's just so much fun, which like doesn't contribute to the strength of a champion, but it does make you want to play him more. So and put in the time in practice. But very hard to pilot champion. It can be very frustrating when you miss your ultimate by a centimeter or they flash out of it. But man, you get the handle on this champion and you go like 16-4. Oh, you'll never play another champion. So there it is. There's our tier 2. Those champions are very good. These are the absolute best of the best. These champions are the best of the best in the current meta and should 100% be played if you want to climb. So we got Blitzcrank. Once again, what is there to say about Blitzcrank? You know what he does. Everyone knows what he does. The problem with Blitzcrank is that he only does that one thing. He hooks someone. In the wise words of Tyler 1, this is the hardest scaling champion in the game because you can miss 99 hooks, but if you hit your 100th hook in the late game, you won the game. So he does kind of have that going with him. I don't recommend you miss your first 99 hooks, but he's kind of like Pyke where he's strong in relation to the meta. Because of these champions that are strong, Blitzcrank is good against all of these champions, except for Leona and Blitzcrank. Like all of them, Blitz is good against. So that's why Blitzcrank is absolute top of the tier. Even with his nerf on this patch, his nerf is not going to like kill him or anything. I think they just lowered his base armor. But yeah, that's why Blitz is good. Nami just got a buff on this patch. Now, I'm going to put Nami in tier 1 under one very certain circumstance, and that is that she is paired with Lucian. Lucian is not a typical hyper carry, such as Jinx or Cogball or something like that. Typically, hyper carries are like immobile, and you give them attack speed and shields, and they just blow through everything. Lucian is much more early game oriented. You want to snowball, but if you go electrocute with Nami, they buffed Nami and Lucian on this patch. So you go an aggressive, damage oriented Imperial Mandate build. You bring electrocute. Nami Lucian is the strongest lane in the game again. I don't know why they buffed them both on the same patch, but they did. So really, really strong lane. Up next, my baby girl. I was a little hesitant about the Senna buffs, but after playing over 150 games with them in high elo, absolute killer. This champion is so fun, absolute top tier meta. There is the downside of playing Senna, and that's that you're putting 2 marksmen in the bot lane, which basically just raises a red flag and says, gank me, gank me. But yeah, Senna is really, really good right now. So much damage, so much utility. if you can pilot this champion, if you can find teams to slot her into. Okay, so let's talk about how to most efficiently play her. This is not how I play her. I play her with every single ADC marksman, whoever my ADC wants to play. But the absolute best way to play Senna is something called Starving Senna, where you slot her into the support position, give her a support item. She doesn't farm, she picks up the increased soul rates, and she has a tank in front of her. Preferably something like Tom Kinch, but it could also be Galio, Cho'Gath, whatever you want. Put a tank in front of her. So if you're playing something like Clash or competitive 5v5s, Starving Senna is the absolute best way to play her. But she's really strong in support and ADC as well. So crazy champion, super fun. I consider it to have a pretty high skill cap, and really fun. Lux, Lux is kind of strong. Lux is really strong, guys. She's very versatile builds. You can go Guardian, you can go Utility, Shield Max, Poke Max, Ludens, Liandry's, Dark, Night Harvester, whatever you want to build on this champion. It's kind of insane. Lots and lots of damage, and she has the added benefit of being a flex pick, which means that if you pick her in the first 2 picks of your champ rotation, they're not going to know if it's mid or support. So, yeah, Lux is strong. Lulu's strong. I've talked about it the last 6 tier patches or tier list videos. Lulu's really strong. We're at a hyper carry meta. You pair Lulu with a Jinx, you've probably won the game. You start out scaling at 10 minutes. It's really crazy. So let's talk about what everybody wants to hear my thoughts on, and that is Renata. Now, we are going to be very tentative with this champion. Tentatively, she is in high tier 3. She's the highest champion in tier 3. Renekton is not a tier 3 support, guys. I was using Renekton as a placeholder for Renata last patch because they didn't have the icon. Renata is tier 3. So let's talk about what Renata can do, what she brings to the table, and is she going to be good and why? So, why is she not in tier 1? I think that Renata is going to be a champion that absolutely requires people to know how to play Renata. She is a squishy enchanter that will die very easily. She basically has no way to get herself out if she gets caught by something like a Blitzcrank or a Leona or a gank. So not only do you have to know how to position and play Renata, your team needs to know how to play with Renata. There is an ability okay, so if you don't know what her abilities are, you should probably go watch the Champion Spotlight, but her passive is basically just built-in Imperial Mandate. Her Q is this incredible, really fun new style of hook where you hook them, it roots them, and then you can choose a position to throw them. So you can either hook them closer, push them away, which is great for surviving ganks, well, not surviving ganks, but delaying the gank. Yeah, really cool ability. Her W is the one that everyone's freaking out about. So essentially you put your W on yourself or someone else. It lasts for, I believe, 3 seconds, gives them increased attack speed. And if they die during those 3 seconds, they then get another 3 seconds to get a kill. So they don't die. They basically get their health bar back, and they have 3 seconds to get a kill. And if during those 3 seconds they get a takedown, which is an assist or a kill, they get to continue living. So it's like Zillion ult on a basic ability that has conditions. Now, in my experience, I press W on someone, they think that they're going to die, so they spend 2 of their 3 seconds not even realizing that they came back to life. There's no death animation that plays. It's just if Renata's W is on you when your health bar reaches 0, you just keep fighting. There's no animation. You just keep going. And people aren't used to that. And it's a brand new mechanic to the game, so I don't think that people are going to be used to that on Renata's release patch. Another thing is that sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, basically, you have to be ready to continue fighting with that W. You also have to get used to the decision making of her W has a really long cooldown. So you have to basically decide at the very beginning of the fight. The second your ADC starts auto-attacking, do you want to use it at the very beginning of the fight and give her that increased attack speed and try to win the fight? Or do you just kind of go into the fight assuming she at some point is going to die and you save the W for her? So it's really cool. I love her design, by the way. Super well designed. But we're not talking about her design here. Stay focused, Ioki. We're talking about her efficiency. So I do think that she's going to be a little middle of the road when she first comes out. She's not going to be as broken as people think she is. She has a lot of potential one patch down the line. Just 1 week or 1 or 2 weeks down the line when people start realizing, oh, that's how her W works. But also her E is it takes a little bit getting used to. It's like a skill shot shield, which is really, really cool. But again, feels weird. So she just has a very unintuitive kit. And then of course her ultimate, which is bonkers. You've already seen it, I'm sure, where she shoots out this gas and makes the enemy team start fighting each other. But yeah, she's just got a lot of new mechanics that not only are Renata players going to have to figure out and get good at, her teammates are going to have to get good at playing around it and playing with it. So, yeah, I think she's going to be high tier 3, lots and lots of potential. And if you've been practicing on the PvE on release day, you're probably going to do great. But just know that she is just not a champion that is super straightforward. She's got a weird hook. She's got a skill shot shield. She's got that W that it's going to take some getting used to, and get the ultimate as well. But yeah, I think that especially in a hyper carry ADC meta, she's going to go great with champions like Jinx, going to go great with champions like Kog'Maw, even maybe not Jhin because she gives attack speed, but maybe Jhin though. Honestly, just pair her with a hyper carry ADC and you're going to be doing great. But I'm going to keep my eye on her, and we'll come back next patch and see how she's doing. But those are my initial thoughts on Renata. Basically, TLDR is that she's got a ton of potential, but she's going to take some time for people to learn. So, guys, that is my 12.4 patch tier list for the support role. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something, and I really hope you are excited about Renata coming out on this patch. It's been too long since we've had a cool new support. So, take it easy, boys. Peace.